1. As much as I love traveling, I hate airports. The issue is having various bits of metal inside my body, caused by a rather well-known incident in the UK in 2005. At the time this happened, 2017, I also had a temporary stoma to enable part of my intestinal tract to rest, given the strictures and inflammation caused by the incident and ulcerative colitis. This meant I had an external opening on my stomach to allow waste to leave my body into an external bag. I was traveling through one of my local airports when the sunflower lanyard, a rather discreet way that some UK airports use to identify those who may have a few issues progressing through the airport but may not need to be physically accompanied or assisted. It was early morning, and I had changed the bag before I left the house, and as usual I was being a little gassy. It's easy enough to just open it slightly and gently press to release it. Stressed by the early flight and the late arrival of the taxi, I'd done this numerous times to reduce the bulge the air caused. I was at security and had all the usual items on the table to be scanned. I explained to one gentleman who saw the lanyard about the various metal bits inside me. He nodded and asked if I preferred the wand or a gentle pat-down rather than the full-body scanner. Not being a fan of overly enclosed spaces, I said the wand would be fine. Each time it beeped over a problem point, I explained, i.e., that's the nail and plate in my shoulder, that's the pocket change embedded in my hip, etc. He nodded. He smiled and let me proceed to wait as my carry-on bag was being scanned, along with other various items like belt, shoes, and wallet, as is common in airports nowadays. Waiting at the scanners, I was gently tapped on the shoulders and told by a rather bossy and aggressive young chap I had been selected for a further check. I smiled and nodded and stood to one side. He asked all the usual questions and then promptly and roughly started patting me down. I complained. He said shut up, that he's allowed to do whatever he wants. By this time, Stewie, the stoma, decided he'd had enough. I hadn't had coffee for breakfast yet, so all I was doing was passing air when he thrust up my arms in the air. I yelped in pain as one arm, due to injuries, doesn't generally go much higher than shoulder level, and complained loudly that it hurt. Lifting up my arms also lifted my t-shirt and revealed the bag. I quickly pulled down my shirt, as no one really needs to see it. He proclaimed loudly,
"All bags need to be scanned, not hidden on your body. Take it off, now."
I adjusted the lanyard and explained quietly, I won't remove a medical device in public. He scoffed and demanded I remove it or he would arrest me and bar me from flying that day. By this time we had drawn a crowd, including 2 other agents, one of whom was his boss, who had used the wand on me. Before I had a chance to explain, he told everyone loudly I was refusing to obey the rules, and complained during the pat-down, and I had a hidden bag which needed to be scanned. I explained that he was roughly handling a person with disabilities, and he had hurt my shoulder when he thrust my arms up, and now he was demanding I remove a medical device. By now the whole line had come to a standstill and watching the early morning show. The boss asked if he could see the offending bag. I lifted my shirt again. The boss smiled and said that was enough. The kid demanded I remove it to be scanned or he wouldn't let me pass. The boss said I could go as soon as my stuff had finished scanning, but the kid put his foot down and grabbed my arm, trying to spin me around, and trying to get at Stewie. I pushed him away. This time the kid exploded. I thought to hell with it, I'm not going to get coffee or breakfast at this rate before the plane, why not? So I said in my loudest voice, "You want to see the bag? Fine, then show me your arse." He looked at me in shock, so I reiterated, "Show me your arse here and now, and then you can see mine." "I have an ostomy, you fucking idiot. Didn't you see the lanyard, or did you just ignore it, thinking you were better than everyone because of your uniform, thinking it gives you carte blanche to treat people nastily? Your boss understood and was willing to let it go, but you weren't. I want your name and staff number, and I can guarantee by the end of the day your arse will be raw, given the fire I'm about to light under it." Boss took him away. I calmed down and got my flight, with one older lady coming up to me, patting me on the arm, saying I did a good job and her stoma is called Sally. My response with a smile was, "Stewie, thanks for your support." Over the course of the day, I spoke to the airport, the security contractors, and the border agency. They checked the footage and found I wasn't the only person he'd given issues to. A week later, I got a letter from the airport apologizing and giving me vouchers for other flights, and that the kid had been dismissed. 2 or 3 months later, I had almost forgotten about it, and the embarrassment, when I was out in a bar with friends, when a now slightly inebriated kid approached me and tried kicking off with his mates, telling me I was going to pay for losing him his job, and that he was going to make me pay. He tried punching me, but I moved and he hit a metal post. 2 bouncer friends arrived, saw him squealing like a pig, and asked me about what happened. I reminded them of the airport story. They chuckled. "This is the kid, and he just tried punching me." I stepped aside so he hit the post. They called an ambulance and barred him. Stewie was disconnected in 2018 after nearly 2.5 years. The colitis hasn't really caused any major issues in the last couple of years, thankfully. 2. A couple of weeks ago, my wife convinced me to go to a tulip farm. Spent the time picking up tulips, paying for them, and having to stand and walk around for 3 hours for Instagram pictures is not fun. By the end of the event, we were tired and hungry. I wanted to eat somewhere fun and found a hibachi place. My kids were excited and my wife was happy with her haul. We ended up arriving at the hibachi place and were led to our seats. Great service by the staff, more on that later. I forgot to mention that I had a toddler and wanted a high seat for my daughter so she can see the griddle. The staff pointed to one of the waitstaff and indicated that I needed a high chair. I was 10 feet from the chair and the waitress was further away. I waved her off and grabbed the chair myself. As I returned to the table, another couple was being led to the other side of our table. Each hibachi setup sat 9 to 10 people. So I stopped to let them pass. After passing, a woman turned around and said something to me, but it was noisy, and I was concentrating on getting my daughter seated. As I struggled with the seatbelt, I felt a tap on my shoulder, but I sat my daughter first. After seating my daughter, I turned around and the same lady was literally inches from my face, telling me a bunch of things. I giggled and told her, "Sorry, I don't work here." Now, I don't know why she thought I did it all. Everyone who worked there was dressed in black and white. I was wearing a t-shirt, had mud in my shoes, and my hair was tossed around like I haven't slept in days. However, she insisted and kept raising her voice at me. Granted, it was noisy. I replied that I don't work here. She then was heated, yelling, getting angry, saying that it was about her food allergies and if she got sick she would sue me. At this point, I was tired and told her I don't care about your allergies because I don't work here. She put her finger in my face and then my wife notices, gets up, swats her hand away and stood between this lady and I. My wife clarifies that I don't work there, turns around and sits me down, and this lady kept raising her voice, that I was rude to her. Oh. At this point, her husband was red and grabbed her to sit down. This interaction lasted for less than a minute. The staff came by and calmed everyone down and made sure everyone was seated. They asked if I wanted to be moved. I said no. I was fine where I was. Then asked the lady if she wanted to be moved, and she said no but seemed pretty pissed off. The hibachi chef has noticed all this as he rolled his cart in. He started his routine and my wife and kids loved it. I just sat there happy as a clam that everyone was having a great time, while I would get to eat. At this point of the dinner, the hibachi chef started spraying my kids with water, which they loved. And for the adults, he would spray them with white wine from a bottle to loosen them up. When he gets to me, he gives me a really long dose and says, "You need a double, you work overtime today." I thought this was hilarious. As he went around giving all the adults a spray of wine, he gets to the lady and gives her the tiniest spray, and says, "Maybe not too much for you." She giggles, but was obviously not entertained. As he does his routine, we had a good time and ate good food. My kids loved it, and to me that was the important part. Now, after the routine, the chef started cleaning up. He tosses a clean rag and scraper near me, and without missing a beat, I yelled, "Yes, boss!" Got up and started cleaning off the grill. The chef started barking at me even more. I moved faster and more frantically. Then a waitstaff brings a mop and bucket, and I started mopping. Everyone was laughing. My kids were going crazy. It was hilarious to me, at the least. So to add to it, I spontaneously asked everyone to give a generous tip for the show, even though it wasn't necessary, and they did. Except for you-know-who. I was finally urged back down to my chair with clapping from my family. Chef gave a handshake for being a good sport, and went on his way. We finished eating and getting served dessert. We then hear talking from the corner where the couple is now arguing because she was mad at me and her husband allowed it all to happen. I really felt bad at that point and just wanted everyone to leave on a good note. I apologized about the interaction earlier because it was easy for me. Had no stake in their argument, and it did seem to help. We finished eating and packed up our stuff to leave. As we were leaving, this lady was at the lobby complaining to the manager about everything. My wife stopped and chimed in. Apparently the manager already knew, made it clear to the lady to calm down, and in the most racist Asian accent said, "Oh, so sorry, no refund. Now you go home." The lady was getting pulled by her husband to the parking lot at this point. Sorry, dude. Then that manager turns to us and in the most New Jersey accent says, "I can't believe that accent worked. I hope you guys had a great time." He proceeded to talk to my wife and kids while his staff helped me get her stuff into the car. He walked us out and gave my kids some takeaway snacks. Loved it. Overall, it was a fun day. 3. I'm working in retail and my male coworker Roy is a teenager. Guess where this is going. The issue lies in the fact that he's dating my shift manager. Don't shit where you eat, please. So his girlfriend has to deal with this. He scoffed at me, so I asked him politely why he did that. He started screaming at me in front of customers saying,
"I hate confrontation. It makes me uncomfortable, so it's bad. It's not inherently bad. It's bad because I don't like it."
I retorted that even before, when I asked him work-related questions, he would scoff and sigh or ignore me. And that I treat my other co-workers the same. I usually ask questions to communicate and clarify information. Did you wipe the tables? What's this? Apparently, he claims that asking work-related questions still counts as confrontation. When I told him it wasn't okay to make fun of a customer or be rude, he said the customer deserved it. Or when I reminded him of company policies we have to follow to make sure things go well, he said he thinks the policies are stupid and unimportant, so it doesn't matter, and that he doesn't care what I think. Every time I brought my side of the story up, he would yell over me and say it doesn't matter because he's uncomfortable. I did not yell once. I just stayed quiet. All the customers were staring at us. My shift lead tried to calm us down, but she didn't do much. I just immediately contacted the manager to explain the situation and asked to never be scheduled with Roy again. Afterwards, we tried to hold an impromptu discussion that I first rejected. Because in my mind and experience, people who think they're right or never respected you in the first place, the discussion never goes well and it's not worth it, especially if they think they're right. Roy screamed at me again, so I raised my voice in response and he stopped. I already warned him that he will not be yelling at me or interrupting me. I asked for an apology, and he said it in a passive-aggressive voice.
"I'm sorry I yelled at you. I'm sorry I did it in front of others. I'm sorry about the way you feel. I'm sorry how I made you feel small."
I called him out for the fake apology, and he agreed. Then he said he thinks I'm wrong, and he doesn't care. So I said to the shift lead that unless he keeps his silence and lets me speak, I will leave. I basically brought up everything he's done that I never confronted him about. Things other co-workers have complained, but management is too soft on. He made fun of a Mexican man for not speaking English, a regular that stopped coming because of this. He was rude to a child that messed up. I have to apologize and cover for him all the time. Him thinking bad about my family, then proceeding to yell at me. He talked badly about my brother, and I asked him to stop. He has never met my brother before. Not listening to other shifts warned him about his behavior, using the bathroom 14 times a shift and clogging them, squatting and on his phone watching TikTok loudly, using my laptop and trying to do my work without permission. Before he dated the shift, he liked another coworker. Since she rejected him, he called her a dumb bitch and said it's her fault for being sexually assaulted at her previous workplace, and that she has a court case on. Constantly bumping into me for no reason. He used to check out my tits and try to talk to me a lot, now screaming at me. My manager said Roy wants to set up another meeting with all four of us this time. I let him know that I do not want to talk to an immature child. I already had 2 discussions so far, during which he yelled at me and put me down in both. I would rather resign or not be scheduled with Roy than talk to him at all. I was also extremely uncomfortable because Roy called me, as he was having a date at the shift's house in her room, which is extremely inappropriate in this circumstance. I had several male coworkers let go for harassing other coworkers. In fact, these guys would talk to me and tell me about their attractions, even when I told them not to. The shift lead defended his friend for harassing a girl. I, myself, had a guy harass me and push his crotch on me. I just think this workplace keeps attracting weird, socially inept people. I love the customers in my store, but I think it's time for me to find a new job. Also, I had an audio recording of my girl coworkers joking about picking people to bully. What would we do if they weren't here for us to make fun of? Had a coworker make fun of me for my financial situation. Jesus. 4. When I was 17 and a junior in high school, I was taking pre-AP calculus. The teacher, Mrs. S., was notorious for picking favorites and despised all others. I unfortunately was the latter half, despite trying my damnedest at every turn to do my best and get her to like me. She would find the smallest things to take off points on my homework and notes, and it got to the point where I would compare with others sitting next to me who wouldn't get points off for the same things. That kind of hatred. She liked my boyfriend, now husband, more, who had the same class 2 periods after me. He was a senior. This teacher was well known for never tolerating someone missing class for any reason. She would throw a fit when athletes would be out for a tournament and would tell them that they had to turn their work in even if they weren't going to be there. So many students would come in on those days with 4 other people's homework to turn in for them. God forbid if you were sick. Good luck trying to get the notes or even the homework. My high school had an ongoing deal with the seniors each year to combat the senior skip day tradition. Attendance rules stated that the less absences you had, the less finals you had to take. So no absences meant no finals, which all the seniors wanted. The school would hold graduation practice on a school day, and if the seniors showed up and didn't cause any issues during the practice, they'd be free to go home the rest of the day and not be marked absent. Mrs. Ass hated this agreement and tried every year to get the administration to go back on it to no avail. On the day of graduation practice, I walked into class and was immediately confronted by Mrs. Ass. She told me I needed to contact my boyfriend right then in front of her and tell him he needed to be in class today, or she would mark him absent. I tried to tell her he was in graduation practice and they make them turn their phones off. But she wouldn't have it. So in front of the entire class I had to call my boyfriend, which of course went straight to voicemail, and leave a message telling him what she told me to say. For some reason she was really annoyed that he didn't pick up, as if I was a magic contact that would make his phone turn on. My boyfriend texted me an hour later asking if I was serious about the message. I confirmed, and he was absolutely pissed because he had just given seniors permission to go home. All events after this were told to me by him. He immediately drove to the school and went to the door of her room right before the class started. He asked her from the door if she really said all that to me, and she confirmed that she had. My boyfriend then said, "Okay, well, I'm here. I'm going home now."
If you don't come and sit down and walk away instead, I'm going to mark you absent. I don't care what the senior assistant principal says.
She snapped back. My boyfriend looked her in the eyes and said, "Okay," and walked away, going immediately to the front office and asked to talk to said assistant principal. He said when the secretary asked him what it was about and he relayed the whole story, the secretary picked up the phone, called the assistant principal, and said, "You need to come down here. You know who's at it again." The assistant principal heard my boyfriend tell the story again and was livid. Neither of us saw this, but according to some friends there, she walked down to Mrs. Ass's classroom and pulled her out of the class. Well, I can't say what was said because I have no idea. He was immediately allowed to go home with no worries about absences, and the both of us received apologies from the office, and the next day, Mrs. Ass herself. The last few weeks of school after that were kind of hell for us both, with her and her petty attempts to ruin our day. To this day, I can't believe she stuck around after that year and actually retired last year from there. There are so many more stories about her that I personally believe she should have gotten fired, but this is our personal story with her. Fuck you, Mrs. Ass. 5. So for a little context, I have a condition that requires I take daily medicine for the rest of my life. Which sucks, but it is what it is. Because of that, I'm in the pharmacy at least once a month picking up new medication. And anyone who has to consistently go to doctors or pharmacies knows you're eventually going to run into a Karen or two. Usually it's just some mom whose kid has to get antibiotics, or someone who doesn't understand that you can't send in a prescription and pick it up in an hour. But this was the only one I thought was bad enough to share. So I was waiting in line at the pharmacy, and this lady walks up and goes straight to the front. The pharmacist explains that there's a line, and she needs to wait. She looks annoyed, but goes to the back of the line. So far, nothing really out of the ordinary. It happens on occasion. I'm about third in the line, and she's fifth. The craziness started when I was next in line. This lady was waiting in some of the seats and starts crying. I tried to ignore it, but you could tell it was obviously fake. Doing that thing toddlers do, crying and looking around to see if anyone is giving her attention. And when they're not, crying louder. Finally, she was crying loud enough it got the attention of an employee who asked if she was okay. That's when she started complaining to everyone who would listen that, "I have been here for an hour," which was BS. She came in a few minutes after me, and I had max been there 15 minutes. "And I'm sick, and I don't understand why you would do this to me. I need my medicine." At this point, all I could do was roll my eyes and think, "Yeah, lady, you're at a pharmacy. We're here picking up prescription medication. No one is here because we're having a great time at the moment." I finally get up to the front, and they let me know they have my meds, but they're in a box that hasn't been unpacked, and ask me to wait. No big deal, the system tells me when they come in, not when they're on the shelf. At this point, she is bawling and complaining loudly. You'd think she was a little kid who got their toy taken away. I got to sit in one of the seats and just tried to ignore her, as the guy in front of her gets his medication. Finally, it's her turn, and she magically stops crying on a dime, and turns to being angry and complaining to the pharmacist that she has been there for an hour and needs her medication. And how dare they make her wait this long? This happens every time, blah blah. Obviously, the pharmacist knew that this was BS, but was calm and just moved on. The situation got worse when it turned out this lady hadn't sent in her prescription that morning, and it had to be ordered, so obviously they didn't have it. The pharmacist explains that they didn't have it, and she needs to give them at least 2 days for that medication. She then starts screaming at full volume that was BS, she sent it in 4 days ago, so they should have it. And saying this happens at every pharmacy she goes to, and if they were going to do it to her, she might as well just go back to her old pharmacy. Again, all I could do was try and ignore her, and think, yeah, if this happens at every pharmacist, maybe it's not the pharmacy that's the problem. This back and forth went on for a few minutes, before she finally accepted that they really didn't have the medication, and she would have to wait. She left in a huff, telling everyone who would listen how ridiculous it was that they made her wait, and she was sick and needed her medication, and they really should have it. Finally, my medication was ready, and I joked with the pharmacist how crazy it was, and she confirmed that the lady does it every time. And every time the time frame she says she already submitted gets bigger and bigger. I guess to try and guilt them into thinking it was their mistake and magically make her medicine appear. Not a crazy exciting story, but I could not believe the scene this lady made, because she messed up sending her prescription in, and was made to wait for 20 minutes, max. Just to add, before I go, it is possible in the US to get medication in an hour or less. If you're there for after-surgery meds, or you're infectious, you'll be put to the front of the line. And if you're at a well-staffed and not very busy pharmacy, they'll normally just go get it for you. In this case, it was at a busy pharmacy, great prices and located in a busy area, with little staff. Tiny pharmacy and a Costco. So they weren't filling prescriptions that quick. Usually at that place, if you send it in the morning and they have it in stock, they can have it ready in the afternoon, or at the most the next day. It has always been that way with them. You just learn to work with it. You don't have to get all medications ordered. Most they have there. Only one of my medications has to be ordered from outside the pharmacy because I guess it's just not a super common prescription to fill in my area. Which was also true for this lady's medications. That's the only reason there was a 2-day wait. My other meds are usually ready by the afternoon if I submit them in the morning. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to The Impractical Parents of Parents. I pop! Episode 107. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Before you go, I would appreciate it if you booped the like button. It's fun, you should try it. It's not fun, but I still appreciate it. And before we go on, I'd like to give a little birthday shout out to William and his son. That's all the information I have. Well, I hope you're both having a great birthday today. William is on the 14th, and the little fella is on the 15th. Well, I hope you're both having a great time. Well, the little one's probably not old enough to remember, but I hope they're happy anyway. And you can play this for them when they're older, hopefully. Before I go, I'd like to sing happy birthday to you. Oh, also make sure, well, given that you've got 2 birthdays so close together, take 2 full months to celebrate. Why not? Okay, and before I go, I'd like to sing happy birthday. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, William and son. Happy birthday to you. Anyway, let's see. No other business today, I don't think. But nope. So let's move right along to Hellfreezer's question of the day. And today's question is... And it comes thanks very much to Kathy Beckford, so thank you very much, Kathy, for supplying the question. If you could be a Muppet, which one would you be? And I think the obvious answer there is Animal. He has the most fun, has no cares, and, well, quite frankly, all the other Muppets suck in comparison to Animal. But you may have different answers which are possibly valid in some odd sideways universe, so please do let me know what you think in a comment below.